الذي لا يدركه بحد الهمم ولا يناله غوث الفتن الذي ليس لصفته حد محدود ولا نعت موجود ولا وقت محدود ولا أجل ممدود فترى الخلائق بقدرته ونشر الرياح برحمته وودد بالسخر ميدان عرض ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيبنا وحبيب رب العالمين بالقاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيت الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن على أدائهم أجمعين من أول يوم ظلمهم إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد فقال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه المبين وقوله الحق بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل يا عبادي الذين أسرفوا على أنفسهم لا تقنطوا من رحمة الله صدق الله العلي العظيم. The first verse salawat in our Amir al-Mu'mineen and Sayyidat an-Nisa al-Alameen. The second verse salawat in honor of Hassan and Hussein, the masters of the youths of paradise. And finally, with the loudest of your voices, the last of our salawat in honor of Imam Sahib al-Asr wa Zaman alayhi salam. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This verse of the Quran that I started, or this part of the verse of the Quran that I started this lecture off with, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in this verse, قُلْ يَا عِبَادِي الَّذِينَ أَسْرَفُوا عَلَىٰ أَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, say, O my servants, that have been extravagant to their own selves, that have been extravagant to your own souls, do not despair of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. One of the problems that you end up seeing in the community, it doesn't matter what kind of community it is, it doesn't even matter, it has nothing to do with Islam. One of the problems that you see within society is that people stop or they start despairing. This despair in Islam is considered to be one of the greater sins. And if you pick up Shaykh Dastavay's book, 40 Greater Sins, you'll see that despair, according to Ahlul Bayt al-Islam, is considered to be the second greatest sin. Despair. Why is despair considered to be the second greatest sin? Why is it that Islam, if you look at what Islam says, Islam, it says to look at the world and everything that happens from a pessimistic view or from an optimistic view. Islam, it says to look at everything that's happening from an optimistic view, not a pessimistic view. Always look at the world as the glass being half full, not as it's half empty. Why? Because if you start looking at it from a pessimistic view, what's going to end up happening? You're going to end up despairing. And once you end up despairing, this despair at the end, in terms of religion, this despair ends up leading you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This despair ends up leading you away from the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This despair leads you away from believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now you don't even care what happens. You have to remember when an individual despairs, what attribute of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what attribute are they denying? The attribute that in the Quran, out of the chapters of the Quran, the 114 chapters of the Quran, 113 of them start with what? Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. When you despair, you're negating or you choose not to believe in the rahmat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Look at the way the Quran is. 113 chapters, they start with Bismillah. Hatta the chapter that doesn't start with Bismillah, it has Bismillah in it. Every time you open the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is constantly reminding you of Allah's what? Mercy. Allah's mercy. So you understand now that if you start despairing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, what do? You end up denying one of His attributes, and that attribute that He has made wajib on Himself. He's made that attribute of mercy necessary on Himself. And when you look at Karbala, this is a lesson that you learn in Karbala. It doesn't matter what the world looks like, you never despair of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. To you, it might look, to the world, to Yazid, he thought that he's the one who won. Yazid thought he's the one who won. But look at it, 1400 years later, and we're saying what? Hussein alayhi salam. 1400 years later, and we're saying what? Yazid lanatullah alayhi. When you look at Karbala, you see that on one side, there were individuals that constantly remembered Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. They were ready to go in to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. They were ready to see that mercy. And on the other side, you had individuals, hatta after the shahadat of Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam, there were individuals that despaired of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy. They said, you know what? We've committed such a great crime. And what did they do? They continued to commit crimes. They continue to commit crimes. And you see that this is what despair leads to. When you stop believing in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now you don't care what you do in the world. You don't care what you do in the world. When it comes to despair, brothers and sisters, you have to remember that this life has been given to us for what? For us to be here abadan? For us to be here forever? No. This life itself is tests and trials for everyone. Each and every single individual has their own test they go through, they have their own trial they go through. This life is not supposed to be joyous 100% of the time. No, it's not. And you see, no life, what people don't understand is when they go through tests, when they go through trials, that's when they start questioning. One incident happens. I don't pass my test. Why didn't I pass my test? I can't find a job. I've been looking for months. Why can't I find a job? Why can't I find a job? Why is it that in my family, why is it that all of this is happening to me? You know, one bad thing after another. One bad thing after another. It feels like the whole world has caved in on you. And this is when people start despairing. But when it comes to us followers of the Ahlul Bayt, there should be no reason for us to despair. Why? Because if we're truly following the footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt, and we're doing everything that they themselves told us to do, then what happens on the Day of Judgment? We have shafa'ah. We have shafa'ah. So there should be no reason for us to despair. When these trials and tribulations happen, what people need to understand is that these trials, these tribulations make each and every single individual stronger. They make each and every single individual stronger. A worm, when it's in its cocoon, and it's turning into a butterfly, how does it come out of its cocoon? Do you all know? It uses its wings to break out of its cocoon. It uses its wings to break out of its cocoon. If you see it, you think that, you know what, it's suffering. You think that it's suffering. If you go and open up the cocoon and let the butterfly spread its wings without it going through that struggle, do you know what happens to that butterfly? It's not able to fly. Why? Because the wings are not strong enough. The wings are not strong enough. Look at the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests His creatures. That butterfly itself, it uses its wings to open up the cocoon. That opening up the cocoon makes the wings stronger. Then it's able to fly. What you and I see, we might see that that butterfly is suffering, but in reality, it's not suffering. That's that butterfly becoming stronger. That's that butterfly becoming stronger. You and I, when we go through a test, you and I might think that, you know what, that's us suffering, but no. That is us becoming stronger. That's us becoming stronger. And you see that the test that Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam went through, the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam went through, you see that that's the ultimate test. Giving your life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Giving your life. Do you think that all of the companions of Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam, do you think they were all pious? Do you think that they all prayed Salatul Layl every night? Do you think that they fasted during the days? No, they weren't like that. If people have that conception of the companions of Imam Hussein, they weren't like that. Not all of them like that. Hatta some of them that were there, they didn't believe Imam Ali to be the rightful Khalifa. Some of the companions of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. But when Imam Hussein alayhi salam called them, they answered that call. That's when they switched. That's when they realized that yes, Haqq is with Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. So who were they like? In appearance, they were like us. But I spoke the other day about Iman and what kind of Iman they had. That's the difference between them and us. The Iman they had. That's the difference. You and I, if something bad would happen to us, we'd despair. But them, they know their lives are on the line and they're not despairing. Not just not despairing, but they're praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for shahada. They're praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for shahada. Why do I say that you and I shouldn't despair? There's a few reasons that people end up despairing. One, their du'as are not being accepted, or they feel like their du'as are not being accepted. Two, when it comes to family matters, when a couple does not have children, what do? They end up despairing. Three, when it comes to the worldly view and what your position is in the world, if you don't have enough money or you can't make enough money, who do you blame? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In these three scenarios, people end up despairing the most because of these three scenarios. And the reality is that Islam has given an example of individuals regarding all three of these scenarios. But you and I, we do not learn lessons from them. We'll read their stories and then we'll put it to the side. When it comes to implementing that story, no. How are we going to implement? We're not Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam. You don't need to be Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam to implement what he learned or what he teaches. You don't. You don't need to be Prophet Musa alayhi salam to implement what he teaches. You don't need to be Abu Abdullah Hussein alayhi salam to implement what he teaches. They were sent to this world for us to learn from them. For us to learn from them. And one thing everyone needs to remember is, yes, they look like us, but they're nothing like us. All of them. They look like us, but they're nothing like us. Not even in the way they think. For example, in the time of Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam, there were two individuals that came to Nabiullah Musa. Nabiullah Musa, he was going up to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to the mountain to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One individual who was very rich in the community, he comes to Nabiullah Musa and he says, Ya Musa, Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving me so much wealth, I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what to do with it. You tell me what I should do with it. Another individual, Nabiullah Musa, he tells them that, I'm going up to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I'll come back and I'll tell you. While he's going, he runs into another individual. That individual is very poor. He comes to Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam. He says, Ya Musa, you're going up to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I have absolutely nothing. I don't have any money. I don't have any money. Can you pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He enriches me? One individual says, what? Ya Musa, I have so much money, I don't know what to do with it. Another individual says to Nabiullah Musa, Ya Musa, I have no money. I have no money. If it was you and me, what would we say? We say, hey, hold on a second, with 1 + 1 = 2, right? This person has so much money, he doesn't know what to do with it. This person has absolutely no money, he needs money. So what would you and I do? We take some money from this guy and give it to this guy. That's what logic would dictate, Sahih. That's what we do logically. Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam, he goes, I'm going to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I come back, I'll give you an answer. Nabiullah Musa alayhi salam, he goes, and he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, this person, this individual, he came to me and he told me he has so much money that he doesn't know what to do with it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he replies to Nabiullah Musa, Ya Musa, he will have even more money. He'll have even more money. He'll be rich beyond belief. Why? Because he's always thanking me for everything that I've given him. Even the smallest things that I've given him, he's constantly thanking me for it. Nabiullah Musa, he goes, Ya Allah, there's another worshipper, he believes in you. He has absolutely nothing. He wanted me to pray. When Nabiullah Musa said this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies to Nabiullah Musa, Ya Musa, it doesn't matter how much he prays, he's not going to get anything. I'm not going to give him anything. Now Nabiullah Musa stunned. Why? He doesn't even thank me for what I've given him so far. He doesn't even thank me for what I've given him so far. Nabiullah Musa, he comes back and when he runs into the rich person, he tells the rich person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says that he's going to constantly give you. Why? Because you constantly thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah said, if you don't want, or if you want me to take away your risk, then stop thanking me. Stop thanking me and I'll start taking away your risk. This man, he said, Ya Nabi, how can I not thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? I thank him for everything. The wealth is the last thing he thanks him for. I thank him for everything. When he runs into the destitute, when he runs into the poor man, he tells the poor man, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will start enriching you when you start thanking him for what he's already given you. The poor man, he gets mad at Nabiullah Musa. He gets mad. And what does he tell him? He goes, Ya Musa, what has God given me that I should be thankful for? What has God given me that I should be thankful for? Do you see the mentality there? The mentality there is that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not enriched me through money, then I shouldn't thank him. I shouldn't thank him. Nabiullah Musa, he goes, if you want Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enrich you, start thanking him. Ya Musa, what should I thank him for? Nabiullah Musa, he goes, at the very least, don't you have your health? Don't you have your health? At the very least, aren't there other people that are more poor than you? Aren't there other people in the community? Some of them, they don't have arms, they don't have legs. They don't look Sahih Salim the way you do. Shouldn't you at the very least thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for that? What does he do? He gets mad at Nabiullah Musa, he leaves. You see, even when an individual is given advice, they don't want to act on it. And this advice is being given from who? A prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does he end up doing? He couldn't come to the conclusion, yes, I should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Little by little, leaves the religion. If those individuals that are despairing of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy, because they've been married for so long and they don't have kids, read the Quran. How old was Nabiullah Ibrahim? How old was Lady Hajar? How old was Nabiullah Ibrahim? How old was Lady Sarah? If you look at the narrations, Nabiullah Ibrahim, they say that he was over 90 years old, 80, 90 years old. Lady Sarah, she was over 60, 70. Hatta today, you see that women in their 60s, this was a few years ago in the news, a woman in her 60s gave birth. It's still possible. It's still possible. But people end up despairing. Why? When you end up despairing like this, you're questioning the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you want to look at an individual that everything was taken away from, look at Prophet Ayyub. Prophet Ayyub, the narrations, they say that Prophet Ayyub al-Islam, maybe some people might think that, hey, you know what, these are prophets that say this talking about. We're not like them. No, inshallah, by the end, I'll give a story about people like you and I. Prophet Ayyub, the narrations state that in his community, he used to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Constantly thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Shaitan, he became jealous. And Shaitan says to Allah, Ya Allah, the only reason he's thanking you is because you've given him all this. Why don't you take away everything you've given him and see if he still thanks you? So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, okay. He takes away first the wealth. Prophet Ayyub is still thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He takes away his family. Prophet Ayyub is still thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now it's come to a point where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is taking the health of Prophet Ayyub. The narrations, they state that for 7 years, Prophet Ayyub was ill. 7 years. And he's constantly thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When Shaitan, he sees that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is being thanked, what does he do? He leaves dejected. He leaves dejected. When he leaves dejected, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does he do to Prophet Ayyub? He gives him twice the wealth that he had. He gives him twice the children that he had. And he gives him his health back. Why? Prophet Ayyub was thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people, they ask, you know what, why aren't our du'as being accepted? If you want your du'as to be accepted, first and foremost, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for what He's already given you. Thank him for what he's already given you. But many of us don't do that. If those individuals who don't have kids, look at the Quran. How old was Prophet Zakaria when he had his son? The sisters, if they don't have kids, how old was the wife of Prophet Zakaria? At the narrations they say that she was barren. She was barren. She wasn't able to have kids. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them kids. They gave them Hazrat Yahya. What's there to despair about? If you want despair, there was a very wealthy businessman in Medina. It just so happened that he was going for Hajj one time, and on the way, he had a purse full of coins. And on the way, he had to use, nature called, so he had to use the restroom. While he was defecating, he leaves, but his purse, it falls. And he needed to catch up to the caravan. He realized that his purse had fallen. But he doesn't go back to go get the purse or get the money. Why? Because he thought to himself, I'm already rich, I don't need it. It doesn't matter. This man, he goes to Hajj. As soon as he comes back to his hometown, the wealth that he had was gone. All the wealth that he had, it started to go little by little. The people, his friends, they started making fun of him. His enemies were already spreading rumors about him. So what does he do? He leaves his hometown, and he leaves with just one silver coin that he had. When he's leaving with that silver coin, his wife was pregnant. While they were leaving, his wife ends up giving birth. When she gives birth, she tells the husband, I need something to eat now, or else I myself will die. This man, he takes that coin and he goes to the doorsteps of a baker. And he asked the baker, I have this one silver coin, if you can give me some milk and some bread, I'll give you the silver coin. The baker, he's like, is this late at night? He goes, yes, but my wife just gave birth and she needs something to eat. The man, he takes his bowl, he takes his bread. As soon as the baker closes the door, the man, he steps 2 steps, the bowl of milk, it falls down. The bread, it's on the ground. And he starts to cry. He starts to cry. When he starts to cry, there's another man, he opens the window and he goes, why are you crying this late at night? What's wrong? And he tells him everything that happened. He goes, I had this milk, I had this bread, now it's completely gone. The man, he goes, are you crying because of the spilled milk in this bread? And he goes, no, I'm not crying because of this. I'm crying because of my misery. I became miserable. And he starts telling him the incident after I dropped that bag of gold. And he tells him, can you describe to me how that bag of gold looked? Now this man, he's angry. He goes, are you messing with me? Well, like, what's wrong with you? He goes, no, describe to me how that bag looked. He describes to him the bag. He goes, okay, you come to my house. And he tells his servant to go bring his wife and the child. They bring the wife and the child. Every day this man, the host, continued to give this person 1 gold coin. After he asked him, what is it that you do? He goes, I'm a very good businessman. I can do business. So he tells him, for the next 10 days until your wife gets better, you stay here. Every day he gave him a gold coin. Gave him a gold coin. And later, after the 10 days, he gave him a loan. And he said, you're a businessman here. The man, what does he do with that money? Does business with it. He becomes rich again. He wants to give that loan back to him, that money back to him, but the man, he says, no, that money is yours to begin with. He goes, what do you mean? That bag that you're talking about, I have that bag. I have found it, and it's with me. He goes, brings out that bag, and he shows it to him. What's there to despair about? Money, it comes and goes. It comes and goes. Some people, they despair because they don't have money. It'll come, it'll go. If you look at the narrations, in the time of Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, he was just a worshipper. Like you and I. Not a prophet. No, he wasn't a prophet. There happened a time when Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, he sees him worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When he sees him worshipping, Nabi Ibrahim, he tells him, you know what, I like the way that you worship. Can I join you? The man, he says, you can join me, but you might not be able to come to my house. He goes, why not? He goes, because I'm able to walk on water. The worshipper, he goes, I'm able to walk on water. Nabi Ibrahim, he tells him that, the same God that you pray to, the same God that gave you that ability, he can give me that ability too. He can give me that ability too. He goes, okay. The man, he walks towards his house. What does he do? As soon as they reach the river, he crosses over the river by walking on top of it. Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, he crosses over the river too. When he crosses over the river, now this man is shocked. He goes, how's he able to do what I did? When they get inside Nabi Ibrahim, he asks him one simple question. He goes, which day do you think is the most turbulent day? Which day do you think is the most scary of days? And the man, he says, it's the day of judgment when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will judge people based on their deeds. And that's when Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam, he tells them, if that's the case, then let's pray today that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keeps us safe on that day. And this man, he tells Nabi Ibrahim, Ya Ibrahim, I'm not going to join you in that prayer. I'm not going to join you in that prayer. He goes, why not? He tells them, 30 years ago, I ran into a youth. He was a shepherd. And I asked that youth, whose cattle are these? And that youth told me that these cattle, they belong to Khalilullah. From that day, I've constantly prayed to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to meet Khalilullah. From that day, and I haven't met. And I've sworn that until this dua is accepted, I'm not going to pray for anything else. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he says, if that's your dua, then I am Khalilullah. I am that Khalil that you wanted to meet. When he says this is when this man, he becomes overjoyed. How long was he praying for something? 30 years. 30 years. This man wasn't a prophet. This man wasn't an imam. No, he wasn't. He was just someone who had done what? Tasqiyat al-nafs. He was just someone who had controlled his nafs. Compare that to what you and I do. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One day, if we don't get it, forget it. We pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A week, if we don't get it, forget it. He doesn't want to give it to us. He doesn't want to give it to us. Even if he doesn't want to give it to you, there are reasons why he doesn't want to give it to you. It's not always that when he gives it to you, it's because he loves you. No, it's not always that if he's not giving it to you now, it's not because he doesn't love you. At the time of the Holy Prophet has been called to eat dinner. The man who invited the Holy Prophet, he tells the Holy Prophet, Ya Rasulullah, every time I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something, I always get it. Whenever I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Holy Prophet has just sat down. He's come, he sat down. The man, he tells the Holy Prophet that, Ya Rasulullah, every time I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for something, I always get it. The Holy Prophet, he gets mad, he gets up and he leaves. While he's leaving, he tells this man, don't think that this is a good thing, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala constantly answers your prayers like this. Don't think that this is a good thing. In fact, if he's constantly giving it to you, it's because he doesn't want to hear your voice. He doesn't want to hear your voice. And this is what the ulama, this is what the imams themselves say. If you've been given something by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't think you have some sort of high status. No. Because you don't know the reason you've been given it. If you're not being given something, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows better than you of what's going to benefit you and what's going to be detrimental to you. Isn't that what the Quran says? You might like a thing, but it is detrimental to you. And you might hate a thing, but it is beneficial to you. And you see so much, even in this day and age, people that wanted money beyond belief, when they win the lottery, what happens? They end up having more problems than they did before they had money. They end up having more problems. 1, 2, when they get all of that money, they don't know what to do with it. They don't know what to do with it. That's why you hear after 2 years, after 3 years, they're bankrupt. They don't know what to do with it. And this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying. Maybe you think something is good for you, but in reality it's bad it's detrimental to you. And maybe you think that something is bad for you, but in reality it's good for you. The more you want of the world, the less you start thinking about the afterlife. The less that you start thinking about that afterlife. And this is what we need to remember. These 72, these 313 that were with Abu Abdullah al-Hussein al-Islam, they stopped caring about the world. Some of them, they had the world in front of them, like Zubair. Wealthy, he leaves his wealth. Why? Because at the end, it's that afterlife that you and I really want. It's that afterlife. Tonight, we're commemorating the shahadat of who? That individual who is known as the mirror image of Rasulullah. To give your life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that young age, whether he was 18, whether he was 24, to give your life for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that young age, what does it tell you about the way that he was raised? What does it tell you? You look at Ali al-Akbar. What does he tell his father? Oh, father, are we not on the right path? Then it's not going to matter what happens. It won't matter if death falls on us or we fall on death. That doesn't matter, as long as we're on the right path. But brothers, sisters, of all of the shuhada of Karbala, there was only one shaheed that required permission from 4 individuals before he went out for battle. Abul Fazl Abbas alayhi salam, he didn't require permission from 4 individuals, no. All of the other Banu Hashim, they did not get permission from 4 individuals. But it was only and only Ali al-Akbar who needed to get permission from 4 individuals before he went to battle. Sallallahu alayka ya Rasulallah. Sallallahu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Sallallahu alayki ya Siddiqatu Fatima. Sallallahu alayka ya Hasan al-Mujtaba. Sallallahu alayka ya Gharib al-Ghuraba. Ya Aba Abdullah al-Hussein. Brothers, sisters, when Ali al-Akbar, he goes to Abu Abdullah for permission to go out into the battlefield. Abu Abdullah, he tells Ali al-Akbar, oh my son Akbar, before you go out to the battlefield, you have permission from me, but before you go out to the battlefield, go get permission from your aunt Zainab, go get permission from your mother Layla, and go get permission from your brother Sayyid Sajjad. Brothers and sisters, the narrations, they state that he first went to Lady Zainab and he goes and he asks her, oh auntie dear, do you give me permission to sacrifice my life for my father Abu Abdullah? Lady Zainab, she starts to cry and she says, oh Ali al-Akbar, you should go get permission from your mother first. And he replies, oh auntie dear, I will certainly go get permission from my mother, but I came to you. Why? Because you're the daughter of Ali al-Murtaza. That's why I came. You're the daughter of Sayyid al-Nisa al-Alameen. That's why I came to you first. When he goes to his mother, he tells her, oh mother dear, can I ask you something? If on the day of judgment, Lady Zahra, she was to ask you, oh Layla, did you love my Hussein more or did you love your Ali al-Akbar more? What would you say? That's when the mother realized what Ali al-Akbar wanted. Ali al-Akbar wanted to go out to the battlefield and sacrifice his life for Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and his son. Brothers, sisters, only a son would know, only a mother would know what she goes through when she's waiting for her son. When a son comes home late at night, the mother is usually up, the mother is usually calling, and she's wondering if anything's happened to the son. This is Layla, she's giving permission to Ali al-Akbar to go and sacrifice his life. When he gets permission from The mother, he goes to say the Sajjad. When he goes to say the Sajjad, he gets permission from saying the Sajjad. Hamid ibn Musavi himself, he writes that what would happen was that I would see that the opening of the tent, it would close. The opening of the tent, it would open, and it would close. It would continue to do that. So I asked Abu Abdullah Hussein al-Islam, oh my master Hussein, why did this keep happening? He would say that sometimes the mother, she would go and grab Ali al-Akbar. Sometimes the sisters, they would go grab Ali al-Akbar. Sometimes Zainab, she would go grab Ali al-Akbar. Then they wouldn't let him go. Abu Abdullah Hussein al-Islam, he comes into the tent and he says to everyone, let my son go. He himself, he grabs Ali al-Akbar by the hand. When he takes him outside the tent, Ali al-Akbar, he tells Sayyid Shuhada, oh father dear, can you put this turban on me? Every time Abu Abdullah would wrap that turban, what would he recite? He wraps it one time and he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He wraps it twice, he says, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. He wraps it a third time. He puts Ali Akbar on the horse, and as Ali Akbar, he's going out to battle.